When I was asked, when Gil's asked me to get down here, I didn't know what we were going to do, and we have 20 minutes to tell you all I learned in the last 55 years. So I decided I'm going to take you down a trip down memory lane. So I want you to just kind of sit back for a few moments and just kind of relax, and I want you to put yourself in the time frame that I'm going to give you this morning. Now, I graduated in 1962 from Palmer College of Chiropractic. Now, I want you to know back then, everything was wonderful. Everything was pure. There was no corruption. There was people didn't even believe that there was corruption. It was kind of one of those times when you just accepted everything and you believed everything and everything was good. That's the kind of mindset I had when I graduated from Palmer College. So I want you to know 1 year later, 1963, a year after I graduated, the AMA formed a committee on quackery. Now, I want you to pay attention to this for a moment. I want you to remember these two words. They formed this committee in a clandestine way to contain and eliminate the profession I just entered. So I want you to also get in the frame of mind to realize that nobody knew this. The words and the documents that ultimately were revealed, a little over 1 million of them, basically said that the invisible hand of the AMA must never show. Okay? There's the document that was in discovery, in the confidential document, and here's what it says. It says that since the AMA Board of Trustees, in its meeting on November 2nd and 3rd, 1963, is to establish a committee on quackery. The quackery is considered the principal effort is first to containment of chiropractic, and secondly, the elimination of chiropractic. Powerful, powerful concepts coming out of what back then the AMA, which was literally the fourth branch of government. Nobody questioned them. They had awesome power. They could do pretty much anything they want. Everybody believed everything they said. This was a formidable force, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to contain and eliminate the profession of chiropractic. Now, I just want you to imagine just how naive and dumb, innocent, would be a better word, I was. I didn't like the pamphlets and the brochures that the chiropractors had at the time. I thought they were a little scary and shabby and whatever. So I wrote to the AMA in 1966, and I wanted to know what literature they had on the profession of chiropractic. They sent me back in a few weeks a booklet called Chiropractic, the Unscientific Cult. I still have that booklet today. I'll show you about that booklet in just a minute because it's important. But I also want you to know that simultaneously, in the late 60s, for those of you who weren't born then, but for those of you who came through that era, I see a few gray hairs in the audience, you realize that the late 60s was a time when the discussion of chiropractic to be included in Medicare. Now, why was that so important back then? Because we were a profession that was essentially a cult, no respect, no recognition, but if we had the imprimatur of the federal government approving us for Medicare, was a phenomenal step forward in the recognition and acceptance of a profession under siege. Little did we know what happened. Here's what happened. First of all, here's that wonderful pamphlet, which I still have. It's unbelievable the amount of times the word cult and the word quackery is in that pamphlet. Is it any wonder why if you played a word game in the 60s and 70s and you asked somebody gave them the word chiropractic, the next word out of their mouth would have been quack. Absolutely. Word game, word associations. Medicare, of course, little did we know that Medicare in 1968, I want you to think about this now for a moment. Put your thought process in. Here we are looking to get into Medicare as a profession. When the AMA was literally sued in the 70s, there's in those 1 million documents that were obtained during discovery, here's what we found out. The HEW, it was called HEW then, not CMS, Health, Education, and Welfare. The secretary at that time was a gentleman by the name of Wilbur Cohen. We had a couple of powerful senators at that time that were interested in this. We're going to get us a congressional hearing. The AMA had already, prior to the meeting ever occurring, the documents will show that Congress was never told that the results of the study had already been concluded 5 months before the study began. Did you hear that? The conclusions were already written 5 months before the study ever began. That's how the profession started, and we are still, to this day, 50 years later, still fighting this Medicare battle, and not because of the lousy situation under Medicare, but because of the symbolism that Medicare represents. It represents an imprimatur, an acceptance, a recognition that the profession has now achieved parity. So the bill to expand Medicare services, we're still fighting that nonsense 50 years later. Now, 1969, take a hit, walk down memory lane. 1969, the AMA was getting a little bit shaky. There was rumors that people had infiltrated the AMA's headquarters, and so they were a little concerned about being blatant. Although George McAndrews, I love this quote, he says the AMA were historians with a death wish because they wrote everything down, and later on the discovery is what nailed them. So enter Stephen Barrett, MD, forming a committee to fight quackery. And if you want to get yourself, and if you have low blood pressure, anybody in the room have low blood pressure, go on quackwatch.org, and I think your pressure will be a little bit raised. Now, realize again, we didn't know any of this. I want you to think about how this was playing out for practitioners who graduated in the 50s and 60s and 70s, not knowing all of this was going on because there was no information to corroborate and support the fact that any of this activity was going on. All we knew is doors were closing, we were not getting accepted, we were not getting insurance coverage, we were not getting accredited, we were not getting included in Medicare. Why? Little did we know the backers of this Stephen Barrett, and in this document, which may have a hard time reading, is that he politely says that the Pennsylvania Medical Society allowed him the use of their rooms and facilities and equipment just because he was a nice guy. Now, take political AMA with its authority, with its power, with its influence. Okay, but in America, we have a couple of things how people learn. Now remember, this is pre-social media, pre-Facebook, pre-all of this other stuff. So what was the single most popular and prestigious and credible publication? Reader's Digest, ladies and gentlemen, and still a pretty good magazine today. So in 1971, just before we were ready to get into Medicare, Reader's Digest decides to do a shocking story about chiropractic wasting, having the taxpayer waste their money on Medicare. Here's the article. July 1971, a big article in Reader's Digest, should chiropractors be paid with your tax dollars? And I'm going to tell you, the backlash across America was unbelievable. Every congressman, every senator knew that the folks didn't want their tax dollars, because Reader's Digest said it, they didn't want their tax dollars wasted on chiropractic and quackery. 1974, a very popular. Now, this is when I say you have to sometimes look at your enemies, look at your nemesis, and appreciate what they do well, appreciate the brilliance of how they execute some things. Well, AMA executed this with absolute brilliance. So what did they do? Not only did they get Reader's Digest to publish this, but there was the most famous syndicated columnist called Ann Landers. Now, Ann Landers, later did we find out that after she published this column, the AMA took her on a trip to China. And when she was under oath, she was incredibly embarrassed that she had actually benefited from chiropractic. And yet, in her syndicated column that millions and millions and millions of Americans were influenced by, she wrote that chiropractic is poppycock. Again, recall, as I said earlier, the profession doesn't know anything about this Committee on Quackery and all of these wonderful systemic hits to this profession. So if you think about the fact of how this originally came about, it kind of gives you some sort of context. As Dr. Scott said this morning, you can't have something without context. All right, there's your Ann Landers column, and it was unbelievable. And she repeated in the column that chiropractors, according to the AMA, were nothing but quacks. Now, the other publication in the country that was credible and still is to this day is Consumers Report. Consumers Report in 1975, in September and October, did a 1-2 punch. They basically ran in 2 months apart an article called Chiropractors, Healers or Quacks. Think about that. Just think about the title, the inflammatory, incendiary title that is now a demeaning situation, wanting to, with one fell swoop, label the entire profession as a quackery. Now, I don't happen to think that that was a coincidence at that time, and the documents later proved this right. So there's your 2 articles that Consumers Report ran, Part 1 and Part 2. And then the Pennsylvania Medical Society, which was about the second or third largest medical group in the country, devoted their entire journal, the entire Pennsylvania Medicine in 1976, to a reprint of the Consumers Report 1 and 2, Chiropractors, Healers or Quacks. Now, here comes the good part. 1974 to 1975 enters sore throat. Now, sore throat, of course, the media dubbed him sore throat as opposed to the Watergate deep throat, because he was leaking information from the AMA. Now, I'll go into that at some later point, but I just want to give you a highlight. In 76, Chester Wilk and 4 other chiropractors filed a lawsuit against the AMA. The Wilk suit also named one of the nation's other prominent medical groups, such as the American Hospital Association, the American College of Surgeons, the American College of Physicians, American Joint Commission on Accreditation. And the suit claimed that the defendants had participated for years in an illegal conspiracy to destroy chiropractic. That was the basis of the suit. The basis of the suit, however, was because there was, across the country, maybe 20 or 30 of us that received a packet in a brown, unmarked envelope. Now, I knew I hadn't ordered anything kind of pornographic in recently, so I figured when I got this brown paper bag, well, I want to tell you something. When I got it, I know where I was. It was in my office on a Saturday morning. I couldn't wait to finish my patients to read this document. We were just sat there in total and complete disbelief. It's like everything that you could have ever imagined that would have been revealed to you, sore throat basically revealed to the chiropractic profession the things that were going on behind the scenes at the AMA. Now, in 1987, this lovely Judge Susan Getzendanner, brilliant gal, she took the federal bench. Long story as to how she got our case. Needless to say, she saw through things. And in 87, following an 11-year legal action, think about that, 11 years, A federal appellate court judge ruled that the AMA engaged in a lengthy, systematic, successful, and unlawful boycott designed to restrict cooperation between MDs and chiropractors in order to eliminate the profession of chiropractic as a competitor in the United States healthcare system. During the proceedings, it was shown that the AMA attempted to undermine our chiropractic colleges, undercut insurance programs for chiropractic patients, conceal evidence of the effectiveness of chiropractic care, subvert government inquiries into the effectiveness of chiropractic care, promote other activities that would control the monopoly that the AMA had on health care. This was upheld by the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeal. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Judge Getzendanner's words when she made the AMA publish this in their journals, she said the lingering effects of this conspiracy will last for decades. It's only 2019, and we are still suffering as a profession. Now, I don't mean this as a victimization situation, but we are still suffering today as a profession from the actions that the AMA had in its design to contain and eliminate us. Now, it ain't over yet. In 2012 and 13, Mike Vanderwall, a Texas chiropractor, running for the House of Representatives, literally blindsided by the Texas Medical Association in opposition for his running for the House of Representatives. Here's the ad they ran. Now, we're talking here 2013 and 14. We're not talking history now. And yet, if a political candidate looks like a duck and quacks, beware. And this is what they did, and Mike lost by a very narrow margin, primarily because his own colleagues didn't get off their dead ass and support him. But that's another story. Bottom line is, what's the image that they still want to have of chiropractic? Quack, quack, quack. So we're in 2019, lots of information is known, and so I'm saying to you that we're still on the right trajectory, ladies and gentlemen. Here's why. Ian Coulter's paradigm models are being turned on their head. People are absolutely now saying, wait a minute here. And I heard Dr. Ron Scott talk about this vitamins as if it was a dirty word. Are you kidding? When I graduated from Palmer College, and I thought I could grow hair at a bowling ball. That's the kind of concept that they ingrained in us. There was nothing we could not do. And if we did, and if it didn't work, it was limitation of matter. I just want you to know that. So you could always find a reason. I'm almost out of time. Let me say to you that all of these are changing the world on its head. Consumers Report, here's what happened in Consumers Report. 14,000 subscribers, 58% use chiropractic, and so they had to publish this because it was a survey. 2019, Practical Neurology, this Dr. Peter McAllister, who's an MD, who's in charge of the New England Stroke Center. I just want you to see what he said in his article. Modern science tells us there's no nourishing vital force. Okay, we know that that's what he believes. Chiropractic may be good for back pain, but that's it. No role for the treatment in headaches. Underreporting of cervical trauma. Why do patients go? Because we're great marketers. But what he made a point was that the practice today of healthcare, the Dr. Verigi called it the eye patient. That was the patient in the computer, not the patient in front of you. And chiropractors, by luck, by dumb luck, we have to touch in order to do something, and that touch is just magic. And so he's saying in his final quote, for the good of our patients, we must reconnect with our patients on a human level. Oh my God. Took till 2019 to realize we've got to connect with our patients on a human level. We must regain in part chiropractics done by hand. Now, who would have thought that in the Harvard publication, we'd have a headline on the Harvard Medical News, where to turn for low back pain, in most cases a primary care doctor or chiropractor. Think about that if you could have ever thought 30 or 40 years ago that would have ever happened. February 15th, Dr. Heather Tick, get your insurers to cover the back pain treatment, and she admonishes all of her readers to fight with their insurance companies. I will tell you this. This one is a wonderful, talk about a paradigm shift. From antibiotics for all in the 1940s to everybody, every time, to now watchful waiting. And when chiropractors would tell mom, maybe you ought to just wait a little bit, and then the patient would go to the pediatrician, the pediatrician would say, oh, those chiropractors are crazy. We did that, ladies and gentlemen, because we have a responsible view of health care. And so we did that with hormone replacement therapy, and we proved to be right. We did that with antibiotics, and we proved to be right. And from the neuroscience letter, listen, the spinal cord is smarter than previously thought. No kidding. Somebody's finally thinking about this. The role of non-pharmacological approaches in back pain, who'd ever thought? Who'd ever thought that this was going to happen today? So are we winning? Here's my last slide. The paradigm is shifting. We went, I know practitioners who went to jail. So we went from jail to Yale. We now have 2 DCs at Yale University getting degrees in informatics. We're going from fee-for-service to value-based reimbursement. Best thing that could ever happen to chiropractic, because our value will be representative, because the healthcare system, ladies and gentlemen, is not being controlled by the MDs anymore. It's being controlled by the MDAs. Economics will reign. We're going from integration to isolation versus isolation. We're going from inclusion versus the exclusion that we had years ago. We're going from marginalization to mainstream. We're going from rejection to acceptance. And in closing, let me tell you, during my tenure, our weapons were legal and our weapons were legislative. Today, the nuclear weapon that we have in chiropractic is research. And I would urge all of you to participate and support the research so that we can take chiropractic from an evidence base that we know and will support to the fact that chiropractic will be recognized worldwide because of research. Thank you.